the hope of a two-state solution is fading. But we cannot let that light go out.
Even as Western leaders were writing their speeches recognizing a Palestinian state.
This is about the world saying enough is enough. We want peace and security in the Middle East.
Here in the occupied West Bank, the Israeli government and radical settlers have been doing all they can to dismantle that possibility. We've been travelling across the territory. Amongst the piles of rubble littered across this village, small reminders of the homes that once stood here. Ibrahim's house was the latest to be demolished by Israeli forces. It's the third he's seen torn down in front of his eyes.
بجوز اني اطير على مطرح ثاني دشر اطير وين بدي اطير يعني.
What the family were able to save lies next to the rubble of their former home. This was the moment it was destroyed, part of an intensified Israeli campaign of demolitions.
A number of Western leaders, they're recognizing a Palestinian state. Does that mean anything to you?
إن شاء الله. يعني شو سويتوا؟ ما اعترفتوا فيه، شو سويتوا؟ حليتوا مشكلة؟ في ما حليتوا مشكلة؟
Under the Oslo Accords, the occupied West Bank was temporarily divided into different sections. We're in what's known as Area C, in the village of Farosh Beit Dajan. Rural Palestinian areas like this, and Israeli settlements, are under total Israeli control.
Walking around this village, it's like it's been hit by a series of airstrikes. You can see a demolished home here, another one here, two more just over there. Ostensibly, it's because these houses were built without the correct permissions. In reality, that's because Israel basically never grants Palestinians that permission. And many believe the real reason is an attempt to drive Palestinians off the land here.
Formally annexing Area C is a prime goal of many within Prime Minister Netanyahu's right-wing government. With continuing support from the US, he shows no desire for compromise with the Palestinians. Here was Netanyahu inaugurating a new, particularly controversial settlement expansion. The E1 project would cut through the middle of the West Bank, making it even more difficult for Palestinians to travel across it and connect Jerusalem with the Israeli settlement of Ma'ale Adumim. Benny Kasriel is the former mayor and a staunch opponent of Palestinian statehood.
The land belongs to Israel. We are living...
that's not what the international community accepts or how they view it.
What I believe,
sure,
and what the people believe. This land was promised us from the Bible time.
Israel seems to be on its way to becoming something of a global pariah state, certainly in Europe.
I met a lot of parliament members from all the countries, and they are really, really afraid what's going on there. They have a lot of Muslims there. When someone that's running for the prime minister or the president, he will go with the Palestinians because he needs their votes.
But the idea that President Macron, Prime Minister Keir Starmer are recognizing a Palestinian state because of a Muslim minority population in their countries, that's like a far-right conspiracy theory. That's ludicrous.
Do you think that Macron will be re-elected again? No. Because the people now, the citizens, the people across Europe, they are now starting to realize what damage they are doing to their countries, and now they are raising new people, new groups, new parties.
Not everyone here is so ideological. Many in these larger settlements are drawn in by cheaper housing, but opposition to a Palestinian state is widespread. And the most radical settlers, backed by powerful political allies, have been building new outposts across the West Bank at an unprecedented rate, often violently forcing out Palestinians.
You can see already the outpost from here, actually. You can see this is the 5-month-old one.
Dror Etkes is a left-wing Israeli activist, campaigning against the settlements.
They grew.
Over the past 2 years, he's seen settlers encroach ever closer to built-up Palestinian areas.
There were attempts before to establish an outpost and they were dismantled. But this time, with this government, everything is possible.
We're just outside the Palestinian city of Jericho. Urban parts of the West Bank, known as Area A, are administered by the Palestinian Authority. Whilst in Area B, Palestinians have civil control, Israel is in charge of security.
You've got Western leaders recognizing a Palestinian state. The presence of the settlers, does that leave that possibility still open?
No. No. Take a look at the map. This is exactly what Israel deliberately have done for decades in the West Bank. And what we see now, this is just the most extreme period in this policy.
You do hear from other Israelis that, look, we pulled out of Gaza in 2005 and we got Hamas. If we do the same in the West Bank, we're going to end up with the same here as well.
It's possible. It's possible. Hamas is part of Palestinian society. I don't know what will happen. You want a real answer or you want a bullshit?
No, I want a real answer.
It's possible.
But you still think it's the right thing to do?
I'm dedicating my life into towards settlement here because I think that there is no way that any solution can be found with apartheid, right? It doesn't mean that I know what will be the solution.
It's not a political solution most Israelis are focused on. It's stamping out any sign of militant activity. When an explosion targeted an Israeli tank, soldiers stormed the Palestinian city of Tulkarem, rounding up hundreds of men. A policy of collective punishment has seen Israel forcibly redraw the geography here in some of the most densely populated Palestinian areas.
This is one of 3 refugee camps in the occupied West Bank that have been taken over by the Israeli army and all of their residents forced out. The military have demolished dozens of homes to create new, wider roads like the one you can see just over there. We've been told it's too dangerous to go any closer.
The camps were home to what Palestinians refer to as resistance fighters, and Israel calls terrorists. They were also home to thousands of ordinary families, like Aza and her daughter Joanne.
مش حاسة بحزن المخيم كئيب الناس معدومة فيش صوت سكون المخيم هادي.
Those living in the camp were the descendants of refugees,
My house.
displaced by war from what is now Israel during the bloody birth of the country.
كان عندي أمل بالرجعة لحيفا ويافا وعكا، اليوم صار عندي أمل بالرجعة للمخيم، وكلياتنا إحنا غريبين في وطننا، يعني نحن غريبون في وطننا.
It's hard to find hope, but the suffering here is breathing fresh life into old efforts to bring an end to this conflict.
Well, with me now, Jamal Zahalka, an Arab-Israeli politician who was leader of the left-wing Arab Nationalist Party Balad and a member of the Knesset and is now an academic. So Benjamin Netanyahu last night said there will never be a Palestinian state. He's always been working against it and he's going to expand the settlements. That makes it impossible, doesn't it?
If he doesn't want a Palestinian state, so let's go to a state for 2 people, binational state. All over Palestine, Israel, one state for 2 people with equal rights for the group and for individuals. And I think that it's not Mr. Netanyahu who decide that will be a national state, a Palestinian state or not. It's not the Israeli Knesset. The Israeli Knesset have no right to decide to ban the Palestinian people from their rights.
Right, but if on the ground they are expanding into this E1 settlement, they may take more control of the West Bank, does that make it practically impossible?
No, nothing impossible. Israel will withdraw from the West Bank and the buildings and the settlements will be used for the Palestinians.
That'll be the final settlement.
Yes,
Yeah.
I hope.
So-
We should bring justice to this country. To the Holy Land deserves justice for all the people, Palestinians and Israelis.
So do you think any of this international diplomacy, the recognition of a Palestinian state that doesn't currently exist, is helping?
It's not helping now stopping the war in Gaza, stopping the bleeding in Gaza, stopping the killing of children, of women, the destruction of the city of Gaza.
So it's a distraction.
Yes, this is. It's not. You cannot leave someone thrown on the ground and tell him, "I promise you a beautiful house in the future." First, you have to help him to survive. That's what we need. We're asking. I'm quite sure that the vast majority of British people wants this war to be ended, and wants the Palestinian suffering to be ended, and the killing of children, the genocide to be ended. And I think the British government should do something, not promise us.
But do you think they could? Do you think all of these governments could actually do a lot more than they're doing that would actually bring about change?
Let me tell.
What could they do?
I'm calling. I know that Great Britain alone cannot do it. The United Kingdom alone cannot do something like this. But why not the British government have an initiative to make an international coalition to stop the war?
And what? How?
No, they can. There are many countries who want to stop the war. They decide together to put pressure on the Israeli government, and the Israeli government will surrender. I'll tell you something about Mr. Netanyahu. He's not so strong. His history, in his history, he was surrenders to pressure if there is a serious pressure over him. He cannot, he cannot continue what's he doing if there is a pressure.
Now, Hamas tonight are being reported as having made a new offer to Trump to say we'll release half the hostages that we have in return for a 60-day ceasefire. I mean, isn't that just stringing it out? That doesn't help either.
No, I think many people are trying to do something. The Arab states are trying to make something that will stop the war, even for 60 years, and then to come to a conclusion that the whole war will be ended, not a temporary ceasefire. I think Hamas is ready to make many concessions if they talk to them and speak about the arrangement of the day after stopping the war.
Mr. Zahalka, thank you very much. Well, earlier I spoke to Yaakov Katz, the former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, and Anshel Pfeffer, the Economist's Israel correspondent who's written a biography of Benjamin Netanyahu. And I began by asking Anshel Pfeffer what effect he thinks all this diplomatic pressure is having on the Israeli government.
Like these very symbolic gestures, there's the mirror of that is the Israeli nationalists who also want symbolic gestures, who also want this national pride type of response. And for that, there's only one step, and that is annexing the West Bank, saying to the world, now you've recognized a Palestinian state. There ain't going to be any Palestinian state. We are annexing the West Bank.
So that's what Ben-Gvir means when he says he wants countermeasures.
Yes, but it's not just Ben-Gvir. Almost every single Likud minister, this is Netanyahu's own party, ostensibly not as radical as Ben-Gvir's party. It's very hard anymore to distinguish between them, but almost every single minister in the government, including Likud ministers, have come out and said the response to this should be annexation of the West Bank. And that puts Netanyahu under a lot of pressure. Where it really matters to him here at home, where the people who can vote him out.
So, Yaakov, what's at stake if he does that?
Well, I think if Netanyahu were to go ahead and annex any part of the West Bank, it would sever all ties with the Emiratis. The Abraham Accords would basically, I don't know if they'd be canceled completely, but you would see no flights to Israel from the UAE. It would be a complete freeze on all relations between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, and probably Morocco.
And Trump doesn't want that.
And Trump, of course, doesn't want that. And it would also make trouble for Trump as he heads into the midterms.
But in terms of carrying on the killing in Gaza, does this put him under any pressure to change policy? And do the Israeli people think, well, hang on, these are all our allies telling us we're wrong?
The Israeli public, as a majority, there are people on the left who are trying to portray this as the great failure of Netanyahu. He's lost the world. He's carried on with this war for too long. He hasn't taken into consideration the political fallout and the diplomatic isolation. But there's a whole other narrative that the right is pushing, and that's accepted by his electorate, which is this is anti-Semitism. They're against us anyhow. They don't want us to win the war against Hamas. We have to eliminate Hamas. We have to keep fighting to get back the hostages. And that seems to be more accepted, definitely within his base, which is what he mostly cares about.
If Europe, Anshul, thought this might be a way of trying to bring the killing to a slow or a stop, I mean, are they just being naive?
Well, we'll see in a week's time. We're 7 days away from Netanyahu's meeting with Trump in the White House. It's quite likely that he'll get, for example, pushback from Trump on Iran, saying don't attack Iran now and don't annex now because I don't want you to jeopardize my Abraham Accords. But then Trump may say, okay, in Gaza you can continue the war for now. There's going to be a very delicate balancing act for Netanyahu to try and get as much as he can on these issues which are important to him and most importantly to his political base from Trump.
I mean, we've heard Netanyahu, Yaakov, talking about Israel as a Sparta. As a self-dependent, isolated state, doesn't need friends except the Americans. Is that really what the Israeli people are ready to wear?
That's not what
to be a pariah state.
No, Israel does not want that. Israel is a country that views itself as a Western nation. We're a liberal democracy. We view ourselves, our commerce, our trade, our cultural ties are with Europe, are with the United States of America. It's not with the East and it's not with this region. And therefore, Israelis want to be part of the world. And that vision that Netanyahu outlined scared Israelis that he had to really quickly try to recover, do another press briefing and try to explain to Israel what he actually meant. But really at the core, it's less about the economic fallout, I believe. It was more that vision for Israel that we're going to be hunkered down here, fighting forever, and we're not going to have ties and friends around the world. That's something that your average Israeli does not want to see happen.
Now, if total, straightforward annexation in one go is unlikely, there are steps that he can take along the way on there that, exert more security control, take over more
well, it's
of
kind of
the
hard
annexes.
to see how they do more than they're already doing now. I mean, there's the settlements of thousands more settlement homes have been authorized. There's been escalations in the West Bank, not as big as in Gaza, but still significant escalations in parts of the West Bank, much larger deployment. So they'll have to think of something. Now, one of the symbolic ideas, we're just standing next to the French consulate here in West Jerusalem. I've heard some Israeli officials say, maybe we'll just tell the French, sorry, if you recognize Palestine, go and open an embassy in Ramallah and close down your place here. The French will be very unhappy about that. But these are the kind of sort of half measures or symbolic steps. The Netanyahu's problem is he's saddled with this messianic coalition that many of them, even though they're a minority of Israelis, are convinced that God's hand is now upon us, and this is the historic moment where in history, the divine course of history is leading to full annexation of the entire land of Israel. And he has to deal with these crazies because they're not just crazies on the margins, they're the members of his own cabinet.
And so finally, I mean, if Europeans and the Australians and Canadians and the Palestinians are tempted to think that the last 2 weeks of the UN Commission declaring its genocide, of lots of people agreeing with that, the scholars, the formal recognition of a Palestinian state is all building up to some momentum, they're living in a different world.
Well, David Ben-Gurion famously said it's not important what the Gentiles say, it's important what the Jews will do. But that's true in so many countries. Foreign policy and diplomacy seems to be the big thing. Well, very often it's about internal politics, what's happening back at home, at the ballot boxes, around the water coolers. That's the real dynamic. And I think that is the dynamic here. We're seeing Netanyahu really incapable of keeping his coalition together for much longer. There's supposed to be an election anyway, and this it's going to be down to Israelis ultimately to decide what's going to happen here. I don't think that Keir Starmer or Emmanuel Macron or Mike Carney are the ones who are going to determine the future of this region.